Thank you for listening to The Lawyer's Daughter. This is Jen Carroll, and this podcast does not have any video. I know I'm on YouTube, but that doesn't matter. I really appreciate you listening to the podcast here. Let's go get started. My friends, what a night! Was that debate not the best? It is September 11th, which is, let's take a moment. I'm sorry that today's September 11th because it's a serious day for all of us. But I'm going to set that seriousness aside because for the first time in a long time, I had hope last night. Like, the conventions got me excited, but last night was it was amazing. I do not have enough superlatives for that litigator showing up and litigating that debate like a boss. You could just tell some of the legal tricks, including that closing. It happened at about 7:15. She started to close, and it wasn't the closing statement. It was closing in that she knew she had killed him, just slaughtered that beast. And she started to just close to us, talking to us, which was so nice. It just was amazing. So I didn't want to do... I thought a lot about what to talk about today because the key here is to maintain our momentum, right? Because it's still a tight race. And one of the things said last night that nobody's playing on is that Trump just said nothing that Kamala wants to do will pass because he won't let it pass. Even if he doesn't win this election, he won't let it pass. But I'm going to reemphasize the need to vote down ballot blue. We have got to take the Senate. We have got to take the House. And if we're smart, we will make sure that we have Democratic governors in our states so they don't do horrendous things like what Missouri tried to do yesterday. And by the way, the courts in Missouri have made the thing get back on the ballot. Abortion will now be back on the ballot in Missouri. Yesterday I started with the bad news, but it was overruled yesterday, which is great. That initiative will be back on the ballot. But that's the thing. We have to win blue everywhere. We cannot put up with these rich people taking over politics to do what they want. So here's the thing. To keep our momentum, I decided I wanted to approach today with a little bit of humor. I'm going to drop some facts on you. Of course, that's what I do. But I wanted to go back to something fun. And so kids, gather around. For those of you too young to remember the early 2000s, and yes, I do feel the shame involved in saying something like that because I remember it well. If you are too young to remember, some of this will fill in some history gap for you that was delightful. And we're going to start with the concept of it's time to be brave. It's every one of us, and particularly I'm talking to women, but if you're a man who's not been bold either, I'm encouraging you to be bold as well. But this is often something that happens to women. So I really wanted to address this to women because it speaks to part of how we are socialized in our culture. So let's get started. Fear is a powerful political weapon. It's a powerful weapon, period. But it's really powerful in politics. It can silence voices, paralyze movements. This is about fear, right? And push people into corners where they feel isolated and alone. But fear doesn't have to control us. And here's how I decided to approach fear. Through his brilliant satire on the Colbert Report, and it wasn't the report, it was the Colbert Report, Stephen Colbert showed us how to see fear-mongering for what it is, a manipulative tactic used by media and political figures to sway public opinion. So it's fear-mongering used to manipulate us, to sway our opinion. Colbert used humor to pull back the curtain on these fear tactics, allowing us to laugh at the absurdity of exaggerated threats and embrace a more courageous way of thinking. I loved the Colbert Report. His manipulation through fear is nothing new, but Trump and the GOP use fear as their influencing tool. And here's some examples that I need to share with you. Number one, Trump has threatened anyone working on behalf of our democracy and our elections. Through Trump's escalating threats against Kamala Harris in the lead up to the debate, Trump vowed to prosecute anyone who cheats in the election, a veiled attackman to intimidate and discredit Harris and her supporters. He did it again last night. the Bigley, Morley, few people, everyone's saying, we all agree, Bigley, Morley. This tactic of, the elections are going to be rigged. They're rigged, don't you know? They're always rigged because that's all we have time to do is sit around and rig elections. Oh my God, I don't even know how you're eligible to run, but let's move on. His tactic of fear and intimidation extends beyond Harris herself. We saw it with two Georgia election workers, Ruby Freeman and her daughter Shay Moss. Their lives, this is like where the fear literally went in and made someone's life living hell. Their lives were turned upside down after Trump falsely accused them of tampering with ballots during the 2020 election. The daughter had asked her mom for a ginger mint, and Trump thought that was hiding ballots. These baseless accusations led to harassment, threats, and fear for their safety, and both women were forced into hiding, illustrating the devastating real-world consequences of fear-mongering and false narratives. He just did it for theater, but it impacted their lives tremendously. This is the same kind of fear Colbert mocked, intentionally manipulating facts to stoke anger and silent dissent. So, quit talking about, if you talk about the elections being fair, we're going to come for you too. We're going to ruin your lives like we did with Ruby and Shay. If you dare to say these elections are safe, we're going to come for you. By amplifying the narrative of election fraud and urging law enforcement to intervene, Trump aimed to create an atmosphere of fear and distrust around Harris's candidacy. That's what he did the other day in his rally. His rhetoric is designed to undermine Harris and make her supporters think twice about publicly supporting her. This is the kind of fear Colbert often satirized, the manipulation of narratives to silence dissent and control political discourse. So you cannot argue with me, and we're going to talk about what I want to talk about, even if it's not true. So let's continue, because we'll get to that example in a minute. Meanwhile, let's talk about the GOP using fear. Mike Johnson in the House of Representatives right now are threatening a government shutdown. Mike Johnson, who's the Speaker of the House, and they're all back in session, I mentioned that yesterday, he's in a difficult position trying to navigate between former President Trump's demand for a government shutdown and the reality of shutting down the government. Trump has called on the Republicans, this is right now, guys, right now, today, to halt any further budget resolutions unless they receive assurances on election security. So there's a continuing resolution that's in play because we're once again stopgapping paying our bills. Remember, a continuing resolution is just basically, and this is going to happen to me this weekend, is when you know the credit card bill is due and you have to amass the cash to pay it. I pay my credit card bill in full every month. So I do have to amass the cash because I'm one of those people that puts everything on the credit card, pays it once a month so I can get the dollars back because that's worth it to me. But the deal is, I know by the 15th of the month, you can count on it like clockwork, I'm going to have a stomachache and I'm going to be scrounging for money. So that's what we know happens in the government. Our bills come due, and for some reason, we're caught in this continuing resolution game that I don't understand why we cannot get past this. But maybe let's turn the whole damn government blue and see if we can just figure out how to run our government without having to find the money every 3 months. So this idea of shutting down the government is intended to scare those who rely on the government for services and income, right? People who have jobs, people who get their checks from Social Security, Medicare, Social Security, SSI, all those things that help you survive that come from the government will stop because Trump is claiming without evidence, again, without evidence, that the Democrats are attempting to manipulate voter registrations with illegal aliens. It's fake. It's not even alternative facts. You have to be a citizen to vote. It's just true. It's the law. It's already in the law. It's a citizen's right. You have the right to vote as a citizen. Anyway, he's making up this whole illegal aliens are voting thing. Why? Because it's scary, right? Not to me. I could give a crap. But it sure scares a lot of people. I just know it's not true, so it doesn't even bother me at all. Trying to align with Trump's rhetoric, Johnson is struggling to balance his extreme position with his political goals. While Trump demands an aggressive stance, Johnson initially appeared reluctant to endorse a complete shutdown, but he ultimately echoed Trump's rhetoric, saying, "We're saying the same thing." There's no one with walnuts in Congress on the GOP side. I swear to God, I have never seen such a feckless group of whiners, crybabies, and Putin supporters in my life. So this kind of alignment with Trump's divisive narrative is emblematic of the fear tactic Colbert was satire. By repeating unproven claims of election fraud and using government shutdown threats as leverage, both Trump and Johnson are engaging in a form of political fear-mongering that aims to control discourse through intimidation and fear of instability. Got it? So that's really what you need to know. Okay, now let's do one more because there's actually two more. I'm sorry. Let's do another one happened overnight. I don't know if you caught this, but I woke up and read this and I was beyond disgust. Disgusting's not the word, guys. It's worse than disgusted. It's like you need a shower and then you're going to need a shower to clean yourself off from the shower. Here's what happened. Elon Musk sexually bullied the world's most powerful woman who thinks independently. It's not just political figures like Harris who face this kind of fear-mongering. After Taylor Swift publicly endorsed Kamala last night, Elon Musk launched a bizarre and degrading attack on her. His response was more than a casual tweet. It was a reminder of how powerful women are often belittled and bullied when they enter the political arena. Hang on, I didn't even go get the tweet so you could read it because I don't want to give it any more play. But essentially, he said he'd put a baby in her. Yeah, he'd put a baby. What a kind thing to offer. He'd put a baby in her. His message was clear. Can you just understand how repulsive that statement is? If you're canoodling with someone that you love deeply and you have that conversation, it's not vulgar. In any other context, it's vulgar. Vulgar, vulgar, vulgar. Okay. His message was clear. Women who speak up, who show support for someone like Harris, are targets for mockery and intimidation, in this case, sexual intimidation. The fear of being raped, right? Right. It was a fear tactic aimed at making women feel their voices don't matter, or worse, that they'll face public humiliation if they dare express their opinions. Yet, Colbert satire teaches us these tactics are loud, but also hollow. Fear is meant to punish people into silence, but it can be resisted. By understanding how fear is used against us, whether through threats of prosecution or public belittlement, we can begin to reject its power. And this is, a parallel. I've been with so many women who've been through so much trauma, right? The trial, the murder, the whole thing. They were just victims everywhere. And I'll briefly remind you again, I'm there as a victim of having my stepmom and my dad murdered. So our cases kind of oddly had a storyline. The rape victims have lived with this their whole lives. My people are dead. These rape victims have lived with this their whole lives. Sure, I lived with fear of a murderer my whole life, but it's still not, as I always say, I didn't have to feel his breath on my neck. So, and yet I understand the fear women can have, and I understand how debilitating that kind of fear can be. And we've got women afraid of it. We're afraid as parents of our kids getting shot. We're afraid that our kids are going to get COVID. We're afraid that our husband might have a bad day or watch the Super Bowl and his team might lose. There's women afraid of a lot of things. So I really wanted to hone in on this because there's a chance for you to deal with your fear when it comes to this candidate, but I also want you to be safe. So this is what we're talking about today. So by understanding how fear can be used against us, it allows us to reject its power. In today's world, especially for women, considering the support for leaders like Harris, fear is used to manipulate and divide. How could you vote for a woman? A woman couldn't possibly. And you know what, women? This doesn't sound unfamiliar to us. We've been taught to underestimate women. That's some of how the men keep their power. A woman couldn't possibly do what a man does. How many times have you heard this? It's a way to keep us down. We need to stand up, speak out, and reject fear's hold. And using the Colbert Report is a way to help us do that. The Colbert Report made us fear-mongering, which is kind of delicious if you think about the irony. When it debuted in 2005, so yeah, I told you it was old, it targeted media personalities who shaped political discourse through fear-based narratives. Man, I still wish we had the Colbert Report. Colbert's character, a parody of right-wing pundits like Bill O'Reilly. Colbert would come on now just like an O'Reilly, like would just say batshit crazy things, and it was hilarious. He was constantly on the alert for fabricated threats, stoking the audience's fear over ridiculous and exaggerated dangers. That's it. It was just satire. The satirical persona of Colbert's way of showing how easily fear can be used to distort reality and lead people to support ideas that, in the light of day, make little sense. Interestingly, Colbert's Catholic background maybe shaped his views on fear-mongering. This was unrelated, but I put it together because I was looking at how theology looks at fear and how fear is used to influence. And it's interesting, the article that I found is from the Jesuits. And I know Colbert's a strong Catholic, like it's very core to who he is. And I believe he lives his values extremely well. Like even on abortion, he understands it's not what he would want, but it's also not his choice. If anything, the whole idea of God and service and kindness and love is about letting people find their own path and letting people make right with their God in the way that they need to make right with their God, right? That's kind of it. Your personal relationship is yours. And that's what I appreciate about Stephen. I know his values. I know he would prefer that women don't have abortions, but I also know he respects women so much that he trusts their judgment to make that personal decision themselves. He doesn't need anybody else in that room. He trusts you as a woman to know what's right. So let me get back to the Catholic side. Colbert's Catholic background likely shaped his views on fear-mongering. The Catholic theology holds that fear should never be used to manipulate or divide. I understand this is coming from the people who brought you Satan. We Jews don't do Satan, but I also don't remember. Well, that's not fair. I do remember the devil coming up. So they do use fear, but it's interesting that their theology, the people that are setting the rules, right? These are the folks that think about what these things mean and think about religion and how to apply it to life. The phrase, "be not afraid," repeated by Jesus in the Gospels and often quoted by figures like Pope John Paul II, underscore the Christian belief that fear can lead us away from faith and community. There is a very good preacher that comes up on Twitter who's saying this exact thing. If you are operating in fear, you're already at a disadvantage. If you are operating in fear, I'm going to guarantee you're going to spend money on things you don't need to spend money on. You're going to make decisions that are not in your best interest because you're afraid. So frankly, if you even want to do better in your own personal life, you've got to start to confront this fear. The idea is reflected in how Colbert has approached fear-driven narratives in politics. His satire exposes manipulation behind the fear-mongering, showing how demagogues and media futures use fear to distract from real issues and push agendas. This could not have been more clear than that whole pet-eating nonsense. I mean, it just cannot be more clear than that. So that fear is used to distract from real issues and push agendas. I believe the question Trump was asked last night is that, what are you going to do for the American economy? That might have been it. He didn't ever answer the question that was asked. He'd go off on some tangent, but his dog-eating answer wasn't about, I wasn't about anything that might have been after student loans. I don't even know. It was crazy. But the idea is he wasn't dealing with real issues. He was not dealing with real issues at all. He brought up something that was fake. In a way, Colbert's humor can reflect his Catholic values, rejecting fear and promoting a more just and truthful discourse. And it serves as a reminder that fear can be a powerful tool, but it's hollow. And through reason, humor, and faith, we can resist its grip on our lives and society. So one of the things he did that I loved, and I never put this together till later, is that Colbert used to do this thing called The Word. And it's really absolutely a send-up of Lawrence O'Donnell's The Last Word. So if you come to the blog, I have a couple videos in here for you in the blog itself. But if you come in here, you can find The Word and a thing from Colbert. It's beautiful. In the Word, Colbert presents a topic and spouts ludicrous reasoning. So while he's talking with his exaggerated conservative character, a text sidebar, like kind of, narrating the nonsense that's going on the split screen. Well, Colbert on one side and the words on the right. The text sidebar offers an accurate interpretation, typically pointing out the flaws in his argument or undercutting his rhetoric, his fear-based rhetoric, and it shows how language can be manipulated to generate fear. So it's basically this stream of sarcasm that's mocking the Trumpiness. In this case, he's doing the word Trumpiness, but his truthiness, he's mocking that. The word is mocking that as he speaks as a pundit. So it's a great juxtaposition. You have to be smart. I'm sorry, but I think everybody listening to this podcast can handle it, because you have to be smart enough to be able to handle two conflicting ideas at once. And that's a kind of cognitive exercise that I think a lot of people don't push themselves on anymore. A lot of people do, though. And it's fun. It's a lot of fun. So there's a video for you to watch. Truthiness is what Colbert talks about. Emotional manipulation and, of course, no substance. One of Colbert's earliest contributions to the zeitgeist of political satire was the concept of truthiness. I freaking love truthiness. I use it all the time. As he explains, truthiness isn't about what's factually accurate. It's about what feels true. Do you understand the beauty of this right now? It's not about what's factually accurate. It doesn't matter what's true. It just feels true. I actually think J.D. Vance last night in the spin room, when talking about those dogs, kept going with but it feels true kind of answer all the time. No, there's nothing to support it at this point, but it feels true, doesn't it? Oh my God, that's truthiness. This idea reflected the growing trend in media to prioritize emotional appeal over facts. Like Trump feels like his rallies have more people. He feels like they're not leaving early. Trump feels like what he says is true. But it's not. If it feels true in your gut, that's enough. Facts be damned. It's noteworthy because this has only gotten worse. The concept of truthiness is central to how fear works in media, right? Fear doesn't need facts to thrive. It must trigger an emotional response. By coining truthiness, Colbert gave us a vocabulary to describe, not a vocabulary, but he actually gave us a word to describe how fear bypasses critical thinking. You're going to need to hear this, folks. When they get you afraid, reason disappears. This is why we have the response to fear as fight or flight or freeze. Fight or flight or freeze. That's what happens when your visceral reaction overrules your cognitive reaction. This fear bypasses the critical thinking, manipulates your feelings to provoke you to react rather than reason. It's so funny to me because they always accuse women of oh, you're having an emotion, you're not reasoning. And it's like, no, you know what? We women reason all the time. We know exactly how long it takes to stack up sequential activities, including things that involve car trips, dropping kids off, picking things up. If you don't have kids, you do the same when you have to go fetch the thing from one vendor, take it to the other vendor. Oh my God, they didn't have the right part. And you know what? There's not enough money on my bank account to cover it. No, women are very good at reason. We are remarkably pragmatic. And it's funny because we might have feelings. And the only reason you might know it is because at least we've been allowed to cry. But I'll tell you what, if you watch the debate last night, there was only one person up there having a lot of feels, and it wasn't the woman. So I'm just saying, the whole point of manipulating people's emotions and reverting to fear is it wants you to have a reaction rather than reason. You're supposed to just have a gut punch, not a thinking punch, not a brain punch. Recognizing this tactic is crucial in today's political climate because emotional appeals often drown out fact-based discussions. True. Let's look at one more example of truthiness designed to create fear. It was so loud last night that everyone in America is still hearing its echo through the halls of social media, every social media channel available in the United States and Canada, Europe, Australia, and beyond. I cannot believe who all have weighed in on this morning, and you know what I'm going to say. Refugees are eating pets in Springfield, Ohio, and they're coming for yours. Trump's baseless claim during the debate that Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio were eating people's pets is a prime example of fear-mongering at its worst. First of all, because it has a high truthiness factor, right? It's just got to make sense. Bad people would be eating our pets. In this accusation that he repeated with no credible evidence, and JD is just beating into the ground, he was not just vilifying immigrants, and it was designed to scare people of different groups. Okay, here we go. Immigrants portrayed as criminals feeding into xenophobic stereotypes. Xenophobia is I don't like people that aren't like me, right? He's trying to scare immigrants that people are going to come for them. He's also trying to scare xenophobes, racists, that these guys are criminals and they're all around you. They're everywhere. Pet owners and animals were told to be afraid of their beloved animals being taken and put on a hibachi. And racists were given further justification to target Haitians and other minority community members. Trump's rhetoric played on deep-seated fears about crime and the unknown, suggesting that this other group was not just dangerous, but inhumane. And by spreading this kind of information, Trump wasn't just trying to win a debate. He was fueling division and playing to the worst instincts of people afraid of losing their culture or physical security. Get it? He's trying to make you think they're coming for you. I need you to stand up, open your front door, and look both ways. I think you're going to be okay. Fear of crime, fear of outsiders. Oh, there's a video, but you saw it last night. Fear of pets. Trump's strategy was to turn a baseless, sensationalized story into a rallying cry for those who already hold prejudice and insecurities. His false narrative wasn't about politics, policies, or solutions. It was just about stoking fear to create an us versus them mentality, to control the conversation and vilify entire communities. Okay, so here's my sound for we're changing the tone now. So that's all the crap that goes on. Just so much crap. But there's a way to stand up to fear-mongering. So in dissecting Colbert's humor, there are a few tools he uses to fight about this. First of all, you need to know how to identify truthiness. Reflect on how the media relies on emotional appeal over evidence. To counter this, you got to check your sources and verify the information. There's nothing else to do about truthiness except to figure out that it's truthiness. It's feelings based on nothing. It's trying to get you to feel something before you think. So if you find that you're feeling, I did that with Elon Musk. I will tell you, I did do that. I felt so hard when I saw his tweet. And then I had to stop and think about what he was doing. Why would he do something so psychotic, right? Why would he just look like the world's biggest rapist predator on the planet? Who wants that? But he doesn't. He's a narcissist like Trump. He doesn't even think it reflects on him. That's the beauty of that. So spot truthiness. You got to figure it out. If you're reacting before you're thinking, that's a good signal. Second, recognize fear tactics. This is when you hear absurd dangers. Absurd. Okay, thanks. Absurd. Weird. There's a reason Tim Wall's word weird worked. I tried to say Wall's weird word worked 3 times fast with Invisalign in. Ha! 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 But I did it. Okay, there's a reason weird worked. Because it's not normal. When people are using some of these fear tactics, the dangers they worry us about, like a hurricane that could change course based on Trump's Sharpie, is just trying to get you to be afraid. To resist this, this is a great one, ask for who's going to benefit from making us afraid. If you're feeling afraid right now I have to say I didn't feel afraid with Elon's tweet. I felt so angry, like it was from the bottom of my soul. But then I sat in a courtroom listening to a serial rapist. So I'm not going to respond well to that ever. Just never. Sorry, it just makes me crazy. But being able to understand those, you need to figure out who benefits from making us afraid. And in this case, for Elon to post that about Taylor, I'm not even sure he thought about who would benefit. I mean, who would benefit? I don't even know who would benefit. He's just a dick. But look for the hidden agenda. There's always an ulterior motive. So what's the real goal here? Who will benefit? But also, what's the goal? Are they trying to swing voters? Are they trying to make you hate other? Are they trying to make you react in a way that's illogical because you're having feelings? Look for the hidden agenda. And then finally, this is the one. This was why I did today's content. Don't let fear keep you silent. Perhaps the most important lesson is not to let fear silence us. Political fear-mongering is designed to make us too scared to act or speak. But as Colbert demonstrated, laughing in the face of fear is a way to reclaim our power. If we let fear dictate our choices, we give up control. Standing up means challenging fear wherever it appears, in our conversations, our actions, and at the ballot box. And that's why women and fear and the courage to support other women is where I wind this up. Fear is used to undermine women and people who have less power. Imagine how hard you have to work to create fear about having a woman in power like Kamala Harris. She is so competent, it's glorious. That's how hard they're going to need to work to make her scary. Her whole identity and political role challenge the status quo. Supporting a woman like Harris can be intimidating for many men, especially in a political climate filled with divisive rhetoric. It can also be really scary for women. Here's the thing. Fear only holds us. I just botched the killer line. Here's the thing. Fear only works when we allow it to hold us back. And this brings us to why I wrote this content. I'm worried that many women are afraid. And I actually have a link in there with that shows to why women are afraid. It's horrifying how women in relationships in particular are intimidated by their partners and by their community because they have been isolated and only allowed to hear one point of view. And they're really, really subjugated to a lot of fear. Let me briefly, though, address racism associated with Trump's fear, because I am focusing on women for this gender, but it's horrendous and loathsome and worth examination, and I will do that because racism is huge and a huge fear tactic used in this election by Trump. It was on display last night repeatedly. From my point of view, one big difference between gender and ethnicity is people of color have learned to rely on each other for support when it comes to being bullied, and women are actually encouraged, at least early on, not to rely on other women for help. It's changed. My daughter assures me it's changed. But I think for a whole group of millennial women and for, of course, Gen X and boomers, women were not really socialized to count on other women for strength. Now, we've done our own homework and we've figured this out. And I have to tell you, I could never have raised my daughter without the support of other women. I did have some selected men as well because I really wanted Katie to be around some male energy since I wasn't married. But women came through over and over again and taught me stuff. What the biggest part about women supporting each other is we teach each other stuff. Like, that's what I want to do with this podcast. I know stuff. I've lived a life and I've gone to school and I've studied and I see the relationships among things. That's the best part of having relationships with other women is they get you so they can teach you things that will make your life easier. Okay. One of the ways we know women have been socialized not to trust each other is that there's a whole TV franchise built on watching women be untrustworthy. And I give you The Housewives. So, yeah, there you go. That whole franchise. Now it's manipulated and it's BS. And there's, a lot of Hollywood putting its hands in it. But the premise is bitches be crazy, which I'm out. I can't do it. Cannot do it. It's funny because my daughter watches The Housewives, which I was first kind of bummed about. And then I realized it's just really today's soap operas. And what she was doing, the way Katie uses it, is she's rehearsing, like I did with soap operas, how I might handle the situation if it were me. That's okay. It's good to rehearse. I think that's fine. But you need to know that you're also being manipulated. So most women don't naturally turn to other women for support to manage fear until they're desperate. To manage fear, guys, we turn to other women to help us with kids and other things. But to manage our fear, that's a very deep and personal share. And it's often associated with shame. So we're not used to connecting with other women. But I'm telling you, I'm seeing it happen right now, and it's fantastic. And like I said, Gen Z is all over this. They absolutely, the men are in it. The men are in it up to their eyeballs. I've never seen a generation with so many men that support women. I know there's a lot of incels, whatever. They're in their basements. I'm not really worried about them, except online. The real men who are showing up, going out and getting out the vote, the Gen Z men are awesome. So I just want to give you that assurance that things are moving very well. David Hogg, he's millennial, but he's good. Actually, I think he's almost close to the same age as Katie, so he might be Gen Z. There's some guys out there. You got to look at Gen Z men; they're amazing. So for women, when they don't want to talk about their fear with other women because the masters of fear know isolation is essential. So the blue dots in the red states right now, I'm looking at you and I'm sending you a big, one of those Taylor Swift heart things right now, because I know you're not just sane, but you're surrounded by crazy people. And I want you to know you're not alone. We're trying and we're working hard. And I don't want you to take any unnecessary risks, but I am going to ask you to potentially share who you're voting for. But don't do it if you're not safe. I will never, ever ask anyone to do anything that puts their own safety in jeopardy. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. We need you on the other side. What does Olivia Benson say every time? You survived. That is the key here. You need to survive first. But if you're a blue dot in a red state, we all love you. Okay. Here's how this works. Here's how this manipulation works about isolating you. The basis for the pet eating lie, don't talk to the pet eaters, hide, put your animals away, and don't go near the other, is how fear is used to keep us from finding common ground. So in this case, even questioning his assertion in some settings could put you in danger. So I don't want you to do that, but I do want you to use your phone and do some research. For women, the fear of judgment, criticism, or backlash is something we can overcome. Showing our support for Harris isn't just about politics. It's about breaking the cycle of fear that holds women down. Well, it's not that big, but you get my point. It's about getting used to seeing the cycle of fear, getting to see how it's holding us back. It's about standing up and saying that we're not afraid to support Kamala Harris and endorse progress and advocate for change. Unless you truly are, and again, do not take an unnecessary risk. We can take Colbert's lessons to heart. Just as he used humor to deflate fear, we can use our voices against fear-mongering and manipulation. Laughing at fear means living in courage. Colbert reminds us that sometimes the best way to confront fear is to laugh at it. Fear is a tool whose power is used to manipulate, divide, and silence, but we can resist fear's grip if we seek through. Oh my gosh, guys, I'm so wound up about this. We can resist fear's grip if we can see through these tactics and understand the hidden agendas and emotional manipulation. I love you guys for listening. For women especially, this means being bold enough to publicly support Kamala Harris and hold that presence of your power to challenge what might be the status quo in your circle. Colbert showed us humor can expose the absurdity of fear, but it's up to us to take the next step, stand up and speak out and show everyone we won't be silenced. So I don't care if it's on social media, you just saying who you are. I don't care if it's a sign in your yard, a shirt that you want to wear, a thumbs up at a billboard, because that's all you can do is like in your car, give a billboard a thumbs up. That's something. And that might be the only way you can do it publicly, but you know what? You are. And I want you to giggle with delight when you do it. If you are secretly supporting Harris and there's not a safe way, then I want you to at least come on Twitter and just like my post. Nobody's going to know you can't see likes. It's safe. But I want you to refuse to let fear dictate our actions. I want you to reclaim your power. And that's how we're going to start to be ready for a Kamala Harris administration. Be safe, be strong, and don't forget to laugh.
I can't say it. It starts with an M and it ends with a. Not ER.
What's your favorite curse word?
I can't say it.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. Make sure you subscribe and rate, and I'll be back with another episode really soon.